One of the most important guitars ever made looked like a frying pan. The sound of heavy metal may have been partly created because a teenage factory worker lost 2 fingertips. Brian May recorded some of the biggest guitar parts in history using an instrument he built with his dad out of old household materials. And there is an actual guitar floating around hundreds of kilometers above Earth. Guitar history is full of accidents, homemade inventions, and musicians doing things in completely the wrong way, only for those mistakes to become legendary. So today, we're looking at 10 guitar and guitar player facts that sound completely made up, but are actually true. When you picture the birth of the electric guitar, you probably imagine something resembling a Fender Stratocaster or an old hollow body Gibson. The reality looked more like something you would use to cook breakfast. During the early 1930s, George Beauchamp and Paul Barth developed one of the first successful electromagnetic guitar pickup systems. It was installed on an aluminium lap steel instrument manufactured by the company that became Rickenbacker. Its official model name was the Electro A22, but because of its long neck and small circular body, musicians nicknamed it the frying pan. And unlike a normal guitar, it was designed to sit across the player's lap. The strings faced upward, and the player changed notes by sliding a steel bar across them. It wasn't the first experiment involving electricity in guitars, but it became the first commercially successful electric guitar. The important breakthrough wasn't simply making a guitar louder. A microphone placed in front of an acoustic instrument also makes it louder. The pickup allowed the vibration of the metal strings to be converted directly into an electrical signal. That signal could then be sent into an amplifier. Suddenly, a guitarist could compete with drums, horns, and an entire dance band without destroying their strumming hand. So before the Stratocaster, the Les Paul, and the SG, there was the frying pan, a guitar that looked ridiculous but helped launch almost everything that followed. This next fact may annoy a few guitar history purists. Les Paul did not invent the first solid-body electric guitar. He was absolutely one of the instrument's most important pioneers, but solid-body guitars existed before his famous experiment. Around 190-40, Les Paul built an instrument that became known as the log. At its center was basically a solid block of pine. Paul attached a guitar neck, strings, and pickups to that block because he wanted to reduce unwanted vibration and feedback. The instrument worked, but it looked so strange that he later added the sides of a hollow guitar body to make audiences more comfortable. In other words, the decorative outer body wasn't doing most of the work. The functional heart of the guitar was the wooden beam running down the middle. However, the Smithsonian notes that commercially marketed solid-body Spanish-style electric guitars existed before the log. One example is the Slingerland Songster from the late 1930s. Les Paul's greatest influence may actually extend beyond the guitar carrying his name. He was also a major recording innovator who helped develop techniques involving overdubbing, multi-track recording, and sound-on-sound production. So, Les Paul didn't personally invent every piece of technology associated with him, but he was one of those rare people who could invent equipment, develop recording techniques, and then play the guitar well enough to demonstrate why those inventions mattered. Most famous guitarists become associated with an expensive instrument built by a major company. Brian May became associated with a guitar he and his father built at home. In 1963, when May was still a teenager, he and his father, Harold, began constructing the instrument that became known as the Red Special. The neck was carved from wood taken from an old fireplace mantel. That wood was already roughly a century old when they used it. Parts of the body were made using blockboard, oak, and a mahogany veneer that Brian stained and polished himself. They even used motorcycle valve springs in the tremolo system. This was not a kit guitar assembled over a weekend. Brian and his father designed and constructed the instrument using hand tools, experimenting until it behaved the way Brian wanted. The Red Special also has an unusual electronic system. Its 3 pickups can be individually turned on or off, and each pickup can have its phase reversed. Those combinations helped May produce sounds ranging from thick, orchestral layers to sharp, almost vocal lead tones. He also famously plays with an old British sixpence instead of a conventional plastic guitar pick. The ridged edge gives him a distinct attack against the strings. And this wasn't simply Brian May's beginner guitar. It became his main instrument throughout Queen's career and appeared across decades of recordings and performances. Imagine building a guitar with your dad as a teenager and then using that same guitar to record Bohemian Rhapsody, play stadiums around the world, and perform on the roof of Buckingham Palace. That might be the most successful father and son workshop project in history. Jimi Hendrix and Dick Dale were both left-handed guitarists known for playing right-handed instruments flipped upside down, but they did not set them up the same way. Hendrix took a right-handed Stratocaster, flipped it over, and restrung it so the lowest string remained closest to the top of his body, just like it would be on a normal left-handed guitar. That reversal changed more than the guitar's appearance. The headstock was now pointing in the opposite direction, changing the length of string between each tuning peg and the nut. The angled bridge pickup was also reversed in relation to the strings, subtly changing the tonal balance. The controls and tremolo arm were now above the strings rather than below them, which may also have affected how Hendrix physically interacted with the instrument. Dick Dale went even further. He also flipped a right-handed guitar over, but he generally left the string order unchanged. That meant the thickest string was physically closest to the floor, and the thinnest string was at the top. Instead of changing the instrument to match conventional left-handed playing, Dale changed his technique to match the backwards instrument. And Dale used enormous strings. One documented set included a low string measuring 0.0060 of an inch, much heavier than the low string found on most standard electric guitar sets. He combined that tension with extremely aggressive picking and powerful amplifiers, helping create the rapid, pounding sound associated with surf guitar. Two left-handed players, two upside-down Stratocasters, two completely different solutions, and both approaches produced sounds that conventional guitarists are still trying to copy. At age 17, Tony Iommi was preparing to leave his factory job and pursue music professionally. On his final day working in a sheet metal factory, an industrial accident cut off the tips of two fingers on his fretting hand. A doctor reportedly told him to forget about playing guitar. For most people, that would have ended the story. Iommi instead created homemade prosthetic fingertips using melted plastic from washing up bottles. He later used thimble-like covers over his injured fingers. The problem was that regular guitar strings were painful and difficult to bend. Extremely light electric guitar strings were not widely available at the time, so Iommi experimented with thinner banjo strings. He also tuned his guitar lower. Lower tuning reduces string tension, making the strings easier to press and bend, but it also produces a deeper, darker sound. That combination, lighter strings, lower tuning, a modified technique, and Iommi's heavy riff writing became a defining part of Black Sabbath's sound. And here's the wild connection. After the accident, Iommi was encouraged by hearing about jazz guitarist Django Reinhardt. Reinhardt had suffered severe damage to his fretting hand in a caravan fire. He adapted his technique around the injury and became one of the most influential guitarists in jazz history. So Django's refusal to quit helped inspire Tony Iommi's refusal to quit. And Iommi's adapted technique then helped create the blueprint for heavy metal. An injury in one generation indirectly influenced an entire musical genre in the next. Before signature guitars became a giant industry, Eddie Van Halen decided to make his own. In the mid-1970s, Eddie felt that no existing guitar combined all the features he wanted. He liked the feel and tremolo system associated with Fender-style guitars, but he wanted the thicker sound of a Gibson-style humbucking pickup. So he combined elements from established designs into a homemade instrument that fans eventually called Frankenstrat, or simply Frankie. The name was appropriate. The guitar was continually rebuilt, repainted, and modified. Eddie experimented with pickups, frets, necks, bridges, and electronics. At one point, he reportedly dipped a noisy pickup in melted paraffin wax held inside an empty coffee can. The wax helped prevent parts of the pickup from vibrating and producing unwanted squealing, a process commonly called pickup potting. The guitar's original striped finish was created using paint and masking techniques rather than an elaborate factory process. Even the controls had Eddie's sense of humor. The guitar used a single volume control, but the knob installed on it was labeled Tone. After more than 30 years of use, the original Frankenstein was retired from regular performances. Fender master builder Chip Ellis created an extraordinarily detailed replica known as Frank II. Eddie used that replica for much of Van Halen's 2007-2008 tour, and it was later donated to the Smithsonian. The messy homemade guitar became important enough to be preserved in a national museum. That is basically the guitar equivalent of a modified garage-built race car, ending up beside a Formula One machine. B.B. King's guitar was famously called Lucille, but Lucille was not one individual guitar. King used the name for multiple instruments throughout his career, and the reason traces back to a dangerous fire. In 1949, King was performing at a dance in Arkansas when a fight broke out. The fight knocked over a container of burning fuel, and the building caught fire. King escaped, but then realized he had left his guitar inside. He ran back into the burning building to retrieve it, and narrowly escaped again before the structure collapsed. Later, King learned that the two men had been fighting over a woman named Lucille. He began calling his guitars Lucille as a reminder never to fight over a woman, and never to run into a burning building for a guitar. Although, apparently, running into the building worked out for him once. Over time, Lucille became strongly associated with Gibson semi-hollow guitars, particularly models related to the ES 355. King's signature, Gibson Lucille models were built without the traditional F-shaped sound holes found on many semi-hollow guitars. Removing those openings helped reduce feedback when playing at high stage volume. So the name Lucille represented both a personal warning and a practical instrument designed around the needs of one of the blues's most recognizable players. Some guitarists replace an instrument as soon as it gets scratched. Willie Nelson has played the same guitar for so long that he has worn a hole straight through the top. The guitar is a 1969 Martin N20 classical guitar named Trigger, after Roy Rogers' horse. Trigger contains a Prismatone pickup salvaged from Nelson's previous Baldwin guitar after that instrument was damaged. Because classical guitars are normally played with the fingers, they often do not have a pickguard. Willie, however, regularly plays Trigger using a pick. Decades of picking and strumming gradually carved through the wood below the strings, creating what looks like a second sound hole. The damage is so severe that Trigger receives regular maintenance from luthier Mark Erlewine. The goal is not to make the guitar look new. Making it look new would destroy much of what makes Trigger Trigger. Instead, the repairs keep the instrument structurally stable and playable, while preserving its wear, scars, signatures, and history. Trigger has essentially become a physical record of Willie Nelson's career. Every missing piece of wood represents thousands of repeated movements from his picking hand. Nelson reportedly gave his repairer a simple instruction: keep the guitar working, because as long as Trigger keeps working, Willie will keep working. Most musicians own their guitars. At this point, Willie Nelson and Trigger seem more like long-term business partners. Guitars aren't limited to Earth. Musical instruments have been carried into space since the 1960s, beginning with a tiny harmonica and a set of bells used during the Gemini 6 mission. The first acoustic guitar, believed to have been played in space, appeared aboard the Soviet Salyut 6 space station in 1978. Since then, guitars have become surprisingly common aboard long-duration space stations. There is a practical reason. Space agencies recognized that music could provide recreation and psychological support for crews spending months away from Earth. In 1995, Canadian astronaut Chris Hadfield brought a specially modified collapsible guitar aboard the Russian space station Mir. The instrument remained in orbit for 952 days before returning to Earth. The International Space Station later received its own acoustic guitar. Hadfield played a Canadian-made Larrivee guitar while living aboard the ISS, and famously recorded a version of David Bowie's Space Oddity shortly before returning home in 2013. Playing guitar in zero gravity creates problems no Earth-based guitarist normally considers. The instrument does not naturally rest against your body. Your strumming arm does not have its normal weight. Even pressing against the guitar can push you and the instrument in opposite directions. Hadfield has explained that he had to pin the guitar against himself to stabilize it. So, somewhere along the path from the frying pan to the Stratocaster, the guitar became more than a stage instrument. It became part of the standard equipment used to keep humans sane while orbiting the planet at roughly 28,000 kilometers per hour. The final fact is less about one guitar and more about the entire history of the instrument. Many of the sounds we now consider normal were created by somebody doing something that looked incorrect. Early inventors removed the resonating body from a guitar and replaced it with a block of wood. Jimi Hendrix flipped a guitar upside down. Dick Dale flipped one upside down and left the strings backwards. Brian May ignored established manufacturers and built an instrument at home. Tony Iommi used artificial fingertips, banjo strings, and lower tuning because standard equipment no longer worked for him. Eddie Van Halen mixed parts and electronics from competing guitar designs because neither company sold the instrument he wanted. Willie Nelson kept playing a guitar after it developed a hole large enough to frighten most repair technicians. None of these decisions began as an attempt to obey guitar tradition. They were attempts to solve personal problems. How do I make the guitar louder? How do I play left-handed when left-handed guitars are difficult to find? How do I keep playing after an injury? How do I get the feel of one guitar and the sound of another? How do I make one instrument last for an entire career? The solutions became styles, sounds, and eventually new traditions. That may be the most interesting thing about the guitar. It is a relatively simple machine, strings stretched across wood, with magnets and wire added if you want electricity. But because it is simple, players can bend it to their own needs. Sometimes, literally.